Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going on a deep dive into a world that might be a little closer to home than usual, but trust me, it's going to be just as mind-blowing. We're talking about insects. Those little creatures we see buzzing around, crawling underfoot. Maybe you swat them away, maybe you admire their delicate wings. But have you ever stopped to think about where they came from?
You know, it's funny, isn't it? We share this planet with insects, but their origins are shrouded in mystery. It's one of those big evolutionary puzzles that keep scientists up at night. And for this deep dive, we've got a whole stack of research papers, fossil records, even some anecdotal accounts. We're going to dig deep and see if we can make sense of it all, or at least try to.
Sounds like quite the challenge. So let's get started with the basics then. Where did insects even come from? What's the origin story here?
Well, the oldest insect fossil we've found so far dates back about 370 million years. Imagine that, 370 million years. It was this tiny little thing, like a flea, only about 3 millimeters long. But here's the catch. The next insect fossils we find, they don't appear for another 70 million years.
70 million years? That's a huge E-gap.
A huge E gap. It's like a whole chapter ripped out of the evolutionary storybook.
So what happened during that time? Did insects just vanish and then reappear?
That's the million-dollar question, or maybe the 70-million-year question in this case. And when insects do reappear in the fossil record, it's not just a few new species here and there, it's an explosion of diversity. All sorts of different insect forms suddenly popping up.
Like they came out of nowhere.
Almost. We're talking giant dragonflies with wingspans over 2 feet long, huge centipedes, even sea scorpions that were over 8 feet long.
8 feet. Okay, now that's just terrifying.
This period is known as the Carboniferous, and it was a time of insect gigantism.
Giant prehistoric insects. That's something I'd like to see. From a safe distance, of course.
Definitely from a safe distance.
But if these giants existed back then, why are insects so much smaller today? Did they shrink over time?
That's where things get even weirder. While the giants died out, the basic body plans of the insects we see today, ants, beetles, butterflies, all those familiar forms, they've stayed remarkably consistent for millions of years. Like the Chinese stick insect, the largest living insect today, which can grow to over 2 feet long. It looks strikingly similar to its ancient ancestors.
So you've got this massive gap in the fossil record, then a sudden burst of insect diversity, and then their basic forms remain pretty much the same for millions of years. It's almost like they just appeared out of nowhere, fully formed.
And that's why the insect panspermia theory is so interesting. 2 professors from Cardiff University proposed this idea. They suggested that maybe, just maybe, insect eggs or even their genetic material arrived on Earth through meteorites or comets.
Wait, are you suggesting that insects could be aliens?
It's a possibility worth considering. Panspermia is the idea that life exists throughout the universe and it's spread through these space rocks. It sounds like science fiction, I know, but it would explain the lack of those transitional fossils and that sudden burst of insect diversity.
Okay, so maybe insects are alien visitors. That's a wild thought. But if we look at some of the unique physical traits of insects, it does kind of add another layer to this whole mystery.
It does, doesn't it?
Like their exoskeletons. Most animals have skeletons on the inside, right? With flesh covering the bones. But insects, they've got this hard external skeleton with their soft parts on the inside.
Almost like they're built inside out compared to us.
Exactly. Why would they have evolved that way?
Well, some scientists theorize that this exoskeleton could have been an adaptation to a much harsher, more extreme environment, perhaps even an alien one. And then you've got the wings. Insect wings are designed specifically for flight, unlike bird wings, which evolved from limbs.
So you're saying insects were born to fly, not just adapted to it over time.
Exactly. It suggests they might have been intended to fly from the very beginning. It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. Insects, potential aliens with built-in spacesuits and wings ready for takeoff, who knew? All right, so we've talked exoskeletons, we've talked wings, but what about insect eyes? Those always seem so strange to me, like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Oh yeah, insect vision. Now that's one of their most fascinating adaptations for sure.
I mean, have you ever looked closely at a fly's eye? It's like 1,000 tiny little eyes all crammed together.
Right, it's called a compound eye, and it gives them a totally different perspective on the world than what we see.
So how exactly does that work?
Well, instead of our single lens focusing a sharp image, their compound eyes have multiple lenses, each capturing a little piece of the picture. It's like a mosaic, a bunch of tiny images that their brain puts together.
So they don't see as clearly as we do.
Not in terms of resolution, no, but what they lack in detail, they make up for in speed. Insects can process visual information much faster than we can.
Which is why it's so hard to swat a fly.
Exactly. To them, your hand is moving in slow motion.
So it's not just about what they see, it's about how quickly they react.
Precisely.
Fascinating. Okay, but let's get back to this whole alien thing for a minute. If insects really did come from another planet, what would that tell us about the possibility of life elsewhere in the universe?
That's a big question. It would mean that life is tougher than we think, more adaptable. I mean, imagine insect-like life surviving a trip through space. It's mind-boggling.
Right, you would kind of open up a whole new way of thinking about life, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about all those ancient stories and myths about strange creatures and beings.
Yeah, those stories might not be so far-fetched after all.
But even if we put the whole alien theory aside for a moment, there's still so much to learn about insects right here on Earth.
Absolutely.
Like their resilience. They've survived for hundreds of millions of years through all sorts of environmental changes.
As survivors, that's for sure.
What's their secret?
Well, for one thing, their nervous system is decentralized. Unlike us, where our brain is the main control center, insects have these clusters of nerve cells called ganglia spread throughout their bodies.
So even if they lose a limb or, I don't know, even their head, they can still keep going?
To a certain extent, yeah. A decapitated insect can actually survive for a while.
Seriously?
Seriously.
That's wild.
And then there's metamorphosis, the process of transformation from larva to adult.
Like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Exactly. But the process itself is still a bit of a mystery. Inside the cocoon, the insect basically dissolves into this kind of soup of cells, and then somehow it reassembles itself into a completely different form.
It's like a complete rebuild.
A complete rebuild.
Amazing. Okay, but going back to this question of intelligence for a minute, we were talking earlier about how insects seem to defy the laws of physics with some of their abilities. Like, can you give us some more examples of that?
Oh, sure. Take the dragonfly, for instance. A true aerial acrobat. Hovering, flying backwards, changing direction on a dime, all at speeds no man-made aircraft could match. Well, except for maybe drones. And then you've got the cockroach. Talk about acceleration. They can go from 0 to 270 kilometers per hour in a fraction of a second and stop just as quickly.
It's like they have some kind of secret biomechanical technology that we haven't figured out yet.
Right?
Didn't scientists actually find gears in the legs of an insect?
Yeah, back in 2013, researchers discovered tiny gears in the legs of a small hopping insect called Isis coleoptratus. These gears help to synchronize the movement of their legs so they can jump with incredible power and precision.
Hold on, real gears.
Real gears.
Like little tiny mechanical gears.
It's incredible, right? It proves that complex mechanical systems can evolve in nature, even at a microscopic level.
That's amazing. It's like finding a tiny Swiss watch inside an insect. So we've got these incredible physical abilities. But what about their brains? Are insects really as simple-minded as we often think?
Well, that's where another misconception comes in. A study in 2016 showed that cockroaches, when faced with a threat, displayed an IQ that could be over 340.
340, that's genius level. Are you saying cockroaches are smarter than Einstein?
It's not exactly a direct comparison, but it does challenge our assumptions about insect intelligence. There's even a theory that cockroaches, despite having wings for millions of years, might have simply forgotten how to fly.
What do you mean, forgotten how to fly?
Well, they found walking to be more efficient, more suited to their environment.
So they just decided to give up on flying.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? It makes you wonder, could we humans have lost touch with ancient abilities or uses for parts of our anatomy that now seem useless?
So we talked about alien origins. We've talked about incredible resilience and intelligence. And today we're diving into an aspect of insect life that's almost like something out of a spy movie. Insect mimicry. Basically, it's nature's version of disguise, where some insects have evolved to look and act like other, often more dangerous creatures.
It's a fascinating example of evolution in action. These mimics, they've developed incredibly convincing disguises to avoid predators, to attract prey, even to infiltrate other insect societies.
So you're telling me there are insects out there pretending to be something they're not?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. A classic example is the viceroy butterfly. It looks almost identical to the monarch butterfly, which is known for its toxicity.
Ah, so birds and other predators avoid monarchs because they know they'll get a nasty surprise if they try to eat them.
Exactly.
So the viceroy is basically using the monarch's bad reputation to protect itself, even though it's not actually poisonous.
Precisely. It's a brilliant strategy. Predators have learned to avoid that distinctive orange and black pattern, and the viceroy benefits from that even though it doesn't have the same chemical defenses.
So it's all about deception.
All about deception. This type of mimicry, where a harmless species mimics a harmful one, is called Batesian mimicry.
Okay, so that's Batesian mimicry. Are there other types?
There's also Malarian mimicry. This is where multiple unpalatable or poisonous species evolve to resemble each other.
So it's like a shared warning system.
Exactly. The more species that share the same warning signals, the more quickly predators learn to avoid them.
So they're all saying, don't eat us, we're dangerous.
Exactly. And it's not just about visual mimicry either. Some insects have evolved to mimic the behavior of other species, like certain hoverflies. They mimic the aggressive buzzing and darting movements of wasps, even though they can't sting.
Oh, bluff, no sting.
Exactly. It's a great way to avoid becoming a meal without having to invest in expensive defenses like venom.
It's amazing how far insects have taken this whole mimicry thing.
It really is.
Makes you wonder what other secrets they're hiding.
It does, doesn't it?
You know, it's been an incredible journey exploring the insect world with you. We've gone from alien origins to incredible resilience to genius-level intelligence and now to masters of disguise. What an amazing group of creatures.
They really are, and they're all around us. So the next time you see an insect, take a moment to appreciate its complexity, its resilience, its incredible story of survival.
Maybe you're looking at a tiny alien or a master of disguise or genius in disguise.
Never know.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the insect world. We hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, happy bug hunting.